All right, today we are diving into something really fascinating, a framework that kind of gives us a map for understanding how kids learn and grow. It's called the Qtoys 3-tier model. So have you ever seen this? It's a classic, right? A kid can be laser focused, building this amazing, intricate tower with blocks. But then, when it comes to sharing just one toy, it's a total meltdown. It's baffling. Well, here's the secret. Development isn't just a random checklist of things a kid can or can't do. All these skills are deeply connected. Some have to come first to support the others. It's kind of like building a house. You just can't put the roof on before you have a solid foundation and walls. It doesn't work that way. And this is exactly where the Qtoys model is so brilliant. It gives us a map for this whole process, and it uses this really intuitive metaphor of a tree. So it's not just a list anymore, it's a guide that shows us the actual structure of how skills are built. Just picture it for a second. It's so simple, but it's really powerful. You've got the foundational roots. These are the skills at the very bottom. Then you have the central trunk, which connects everything. And way up at the top, you've got the complex canopy, where all those advanced skills start to bloom. Okay, so let's break this tree down. The model splits everything into 3 different tiers, and each one builds right on top of the one before it. We're going to start exactly where you'd expect, right at the bottom with the roots. So tier 1 is all about those foundational roots. The source material calls this the ancestral root of all the other skills, which I love. These are the absolute non-negotiable essentials. We're talking about the physical building blocks like basic movement, controlling small muscles, hand-eye coordination, you get the idea. Without strong roots, nothing else is going to grow. And then, moving up, we get to tier 2, the central trunk. This part is so crucial. It's the bridge. These skills take all that raw physical ability from tier 1 and start connecting it to the world. We're talking about things like basic communication, starting to understand emotions, and just getting independent with daily tasks. They're the scaffold for everything that comes next. And that brings us all the way up to tier 3, the complex canopy. The source calls this the derived canopy because every single skill you see up here is derived from putting together everything below it. This is where you see the really impressive stuff, like complex problem solving, real creativity, and knowing how to handle tricky social situations. Okay, so we've got the 3 tiers: roots, trunk, canopy. Simple enough. But the real genius of this model isn't just sorting skills into boxes. It's showing how they're all connected. It's a diagnostic tool. Here's the big idea. If you see a child struggling with something complex up in the canopy, this model lets you trace that problem all the way down the tree to find out which root or trunk skill is underdeveloped. The source calls it causal chain analysis, which is just a fancy way of saying you can follow the chain to find the real cause. And this slide makes it so clear. Let's just take self-advocacy. That's a tier 3 canopy level skill. For a child to actually advocate for themselves, they first have to understand what they're feeling, right? That's emotional development, tier 2. Then they have to control that feeling. That's self-regulation, also tier 2. And finally, they have to actually say what they need. That's communication, another tier 2 skill. It perfectly shows how a weakness in any of those foundational skills makes that big tier 3 skill almost impossible. This quote from the source just nails it. Instead of trying to patch up the symptom, that struggling canopy skill, you go down to the earliest common ancestor. You find the foundational skill that's a bit shaky, and you strengthen that. When you fix the root, you automatically support that entire chain of skills that grows from it. It's so much more effective. So we have this incredible tree structure, but what's feeding it? What's the soil that lets these roots and this trunk and this canopy get strong? Well, that's where the next part of the model comes in. And that would be the MESH framework. MESH stands for mental, emotional, social, and health. You can think of these as the 4 big kingdoms of development, the essential nutrients in the soil. Health covers those physical skills in tier 1. Social is all about communication. Emotional is about self-regulation, and mental is for cognitive stuff. It's a reminder that we have to focus on the whole child. A healthy tree needs all of these things. So here's how it all works together in practice. Picture a kid doing a really tough puzzle. That's a tier 3 task, and it's from the mental kingdom. But to actually do it, they need fine motor control to handle the little pieces. That's a tier 1 skill from the health kingdom. And they also need to be able to stick with it when it gets frustrating. That's perseverance, a tier 2 skill from the emotional kingdom. See? Mesh and the tiers work hand in hand to give us the full picture. So, why does all this matter? Why is this shift in thinking so important? Well, it really changes the game and how we look at child development. We're moving away from a simple list to something way, way more powerful. Think about it. The old way was just a checklist. Does the kid have the skill? Yes or no. But the Qtoys model, it's a diagnostic map. It doesn't just ask if a skill is missing, it helps us figure out why it's missing by showing us the entire road that leads up to it. And that is the bottom line. This isn't just some abstract theory, it's a practical tool. It empowers parents, it empowers teachers, anyone who cares for a kid, to stop guessing and start giving really targeted, super effective support right at the root of the problem, where it's going to make the biggest difference. So I'll just leave you with this to chew on. When we think about all those big canopy skills we want our kids to have, creativity, problem solving, resilience, are we actually spending enough time and energy tending to the roots and the trunk that make all of that possible? This model gives us the map to make sure we are. Thanks for joining me.